Good morning. This is David from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California.
It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk. Well, welcome everyone to episode 402.
And today I am the lone Lumen brother. Like the Lone Ranger, I'm the lone Lumen brother because everyone else is in Las Vegas returning from LDI. As you know, as many of you were there, we had our 7th annual Light Talk live show at the LDI convention on Sunday. And Snoot and I headed back to Southern California Sunday night. And by the way, you can hear that podcast right now on any podcast site that you may use, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, whatever. It's episode 400, and it's a lot of fun. The whole family was there, minus Ellen, who was too busy putting out fires in the convention hall. We had Ann McMills, Brackley Freyer, Stan Kay, Steve Woods, Zach Bovray, and yours truly on the panel. However, it seems I'm the only member of the Lumen family who has made it back from Vegas. Today is the last day of LDI, and the rest of the clan should be limping back this week. But the show must go on, and today we have an outstanding show for all of you. So first, a little introduction on how the show happened. Way back in 1980, let's go back to 1980, before a lot of these guys were born. I was hired right out of graduate school to become the resident assistant lighting designer for the Greater Miami Opera Association, now known as the Florida Grand Opera. After a few years, I was named their resident lighting designer. Now, after all of these years, I am doing this crazy podcast and have always had this wish to have the resident lighting designers from the top opera companies in the nation on this show. So a couple of months ago, when I was designing Tristan at the San Francisco Opera with my new friend, Justin Partier, Justin had a great idea to invite his friends, who are also resident designers from the Met, Lyric Opera of Chicago, and the Houston Grand Opera, to do a show talking about the unique challenges of designing the lighting and projections for these 4 Class A opera companies. So today we have these 4 amazing artists on Light Talk. They are Michael Clark, who's the head of lighting and production media for Houston Grand Opera since 2008. Michael designs opera at the Houston Grand Opera, San Francisco Opera, Canadian Opera Company, Portland Opera, Lyric Opera of Kansas City, and many other theatrical organizations. His art was recognized at the 2007 Prague Quadrennial. Michael holds a degree in lighting design from the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. John Froelich from the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. John got his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in Design and Technology with an emphasis in scenography from the University of Montana in 2001. He started graduate studies at the University of Connecticut, but left after being awarded an internship in the technical department at the Metropolitan Opera for their 2001-2002 season. He was offered a full-time position as technical assistant in May 2002. John then left the Met Opera to be the first technical director for American Ballet Theater for their 2004 and 5 ballet season. In late summer 2005, John was asked to come back and work for the Local One umbrella under the Met Opera as a layout carpenter. In January of 2007, John moved overseas to work as deputy technical director at the English National Opera until 2009. After a very brief stint in academia down at the Savannah College of Art and Design, John was asked to return to the Met Opera as the resident assistant LD under Wayne Chenard. He was an assistant LD from 2010 until 2012 and took over as resident lighting designer in April 2012. Chris Maravich from the Lyric Opera of Chicago. He has served as lighting director at the Lyric since 2013 and has also been Joffrey Ballet's lighting and video supervisor since 2019. Chris has created lighting and projections for several productions, including Rigoletto, Turandot, I Puritani, Così fan tutti, La Strangold, Valkyrie, Ziegfeld, and the Magic Victrola. Maravich served as lighting director for the San Francisco Opera from 2006 to 2012, where he designed many productions over the years. Internationally, Maravich has designed for the Staatsbühne of Stuttgart, Greek National Opera, Finnish National Opera, Canadian Opera Company, and Grand Theater de Geneva. He has also designed lighting for Los Angeles Opera, Opera Colorado, San Diego Opera, Opera Santa Barbara, Lyric Opera Kansas City, Florida Grand Opera, Madison Opera, Houston Grand Opera, Cal Performances, and Opera San Jose. And finally, oh my God, and Justin Partier is the resident lighting director at the San Francisco Opera, where he has served in the position since May of 2018. Prior to that, he's worked as an associate and assistant lighting designer on Broadway, off-Broadway, opera, dance, corporate events, and in regional theater. He also has designed throughout the United States. He received his MFA from Mason Gross School of the Arts and Rutgers University. So, gentlemen, thank you all for being on Light Talk today. It's truly an honor to have you on our show. So let's start off with the obvious question. How did you guys meet over the years? Because you seem to be all friends.
Well, Justin was my assistant when I was at San Francisco.
For 2 weeks.
Many years ago, for like a year, and then I quit.
Yeah.
Yes. Enough of this.
No,
Wait, you quit? Teach us. How do you quit?
You left my first day.
Well, it wasn't your first day.
It was my first day.
I think it was the first day. I think it was.
It was the first day.
Amazing.
Okay.
Justin, you make quite an impression.
I guess.
I actually met Chris also there because I don't know if you remember this, it's a billion years ago, but you took me on a tour of the Opera House.
Yep.
It was when I was first like carpet bombing every organization I could with cover letters and resumes.
You did. I do remember you came by to do a quick tour of the Opera House. You were definitely on vacation. You had that on vacation look about you.
I was definitely not there specifically for that, but I did appreciate the opportunity to present myself.
Good. And I've known John for years, since.
Oh my God, how long? I don't even remember the last time. It's so weird with Chris and I. I think we met via telephone.
Exactly.
And we had that relationship for so many years that I don't even know when we first met, because we were just like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the first time you and I met physically was at the Opera House when you came in. When did you come?
12, I think it was 2012.
Yeah, it was in 2012, and they were doing a search for a new resident lighting designer, and obviously Chris was one of the candidates. So,
but thank God I didn't take that job, because who wants to work at the Met? That's crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those places. I avoid it at all costs.
One of the few places I've never worked at, by the way.
Really?
I never worked at the Met.
I thought.
Do you like Followspots?
Oh, come on.
Justin, you want to answer that for me? Justin just worked with me.
He hates Followspots.
Oh my God. But we ended up using them, but Justin was really funny in San Francisco. He was like, so you're going to need Followspots? I said, no, Paul and I would never use Followspots. He goes, well, I'm going to put them on the call just in case. I said, okay.
Yeah.
It's smart. And then as the lighting rehearsals continued, he said, so should we use the Followspots? And I said, I don't know. I don't think we need them. And then I got a nice discussion with somebody, and we said, we better have Followspots. So
don't you love those discussions?
As a resident designer, the one thing we love to hear is when a designer says, I don't want to use Followspots. We all say, thank God.
Yeah, I know. Of course.
Especially Justin and I, we don't have to listen to the designers complain about the Followspots.
Yeah. Well, I must tell you that the Followspot operators in San Francisco are just awesome. Paul Curran, who's the director I work with a lot, is very particular about Followspots, and so am I. And he only had one note during the entire 4 or 5 weeks we were there. So that's pretty amazing. But it all depends on management, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. It's all the almighty management scheme. It's great.
Yeah, there you go. So could you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do as resident lighting directors? And it's weird. There are two titles, resident lighting director, resident lighting designer. They seem to be interchangeable. If there's a difference, please tell our listeners. But what are your responsibilities when you're dealing with such huge productions, many of them new productions, and you're dealing also with a guest lighting designer coming in some of the times, or most of the time maybe. How do your responsibilities, what do they encompass as a resident lighting designer?
It's a tricky question. I think one of the big issues we do is we know the house better than the designers know the house. And when they come in, they think they know what they want, but in reality, just tell us your intent and we'll figure it out for you is probably the easiest solution.
Yeah.
Because I once worked at this theater in Southern California that had an asymmetrical front of house lighting positions, which was a disaster. So designers who had no idea how to plot where the front of house would go. So I would just say, what do you want it to do? And let me just figure it out for you. So, and in the situation that all four of us really have is that since we work in rep, what you want is great. What we can do is something entirely different. So you can want, 10 pipes of 40 lights doing all that you want to do. It's like, yeah, that's funny, but we can't do that. So we need to have a discussion about what we can actually get accomplished, especially given rep opera's time constraints are ridiculous compared to straight theater, and you've got a couple hours. That's it to light your show. I remounted a carousel in Houston with Michael Clark, and I had basically 30 minutes of extreme lighting time. That was it. I had 30 minutes of discrete lighting time. After that, it was go.
Yeah.
And we started scene one of Carousel, and 30 minutes later they pushed the set out of the way because they had to rehang some other piece of scenery, and that was my lighting time. So you have to really have your ducks in a row and know what you're going to do. So
you didn't have any previs or anything like that? Any previs
Nope.
time?
it was a remount from Chicago, so the cues were on the board, but I had two lights that were in the same lights in the same place, so the whole thing was completely redone. But as a staff, it is our job to make it so that if you only have 30 minutes of light time, you can still do your show. So Michael was able to focus the show every day on the changeover in 20 minutes. So I had a little bit of time every day. So it was possible, but given the time constraints that we have in repertory opera, we have to make it happen for them.
Yeah, it's like I think the biggest thing, and Chris really described it well, is two things for me. It's people management. I mean, I don't know how
Absolutely.
the other three people feel, but I feel like it's constantly internal, like management structure, and external design teams just constantly talking with them. And it's kind of a unique thing, and I want to get the input of everybody, but it seems like my department at the Metropolitan Opera is kind of the link between like the budget management schedule constraints and artistic needs and desires. And that's not just from the lighting designer, it's from the director. It's like how many times, I mean, David, you mentioned Paul, and he was a perfect example. It's like by the end of the first week, he was constantly coming to me, asking me questions about how do we get this done? How do we get this done in this amount of time? Because after the first week, especially in New York, here at the Opera House, there is no lighting time. I mean, every second is shared. So there's just no time. It's like, and I tell the lighting designers that come in that if they don't get their cue structure in the board with the director after their 4 days of tech from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., doesn't matter how long the show is. It could be Rheingold or it could be Gotterdammerung, and you get the same amount of time. If you don't get done, you will be suffering the rest of the time. And it's tough.
Mm.
So sometimes they get ahead, sometimes they get behind, and you have to get them back. And it's our job.
It's especially hard as a new show where the director has no idea what they want, and the designer still has to come up with some look for each moment, even if it's one look for each moment, just to get us there. And then you have to consider, like John was saying, it's time management. It's like you have these times. So and a lot of times it falls on the lighting staff to say, okay, on Monday we're going to do this, on Tuesday we're going to do this, Wednesday we're going to do this, in order to get to the end. Otherwise, we know that you need to have a cue for the last moment. And if you spend 8 hours in the first scene, you're never going to kill Siegfried by the end if you don't schedule your time.
I mean, here I think it's also about organizing what acts you do when, right? Like a lot of times it's like, the idea we have here is that we're always focusing that if we're doing an old show, the last act to the first act. But if you're doing a new show, you may not want to do that because you're doing it for the first time. So organizing, do you want to see act 3 of Gotterdammerung, or do you need to see act 1 first? And like managing that with the technical department and with everybody else to see like what everybody's needs are in terms of the scenery and costumes and direction.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, it is definitely people management, personality management, expectation management. I think we're definitely the no but department. it's we want something, no, but we could do this instead. And I think that doesn't necessarily exist in a lot of the other departments. It's a little bit more you can, you can't. I think can't doesn't really allow much for us. So we have to have that other option of, is it make it slightly cheaper, make it slightly less time, less big, but create the same effect.
And Michael used the best term, which is managing expectations. It's like they need to know what they will get done in that time, and you need to say, okay, you're going to need to get this done. You're not going to get that done. We're not going to have that. So you need to do this to get that done. So I use that term a lot actually with the ballet world because we need to really manage what their expectations are because their schedules. We think opera's bad, ballet's worse.
It actually is. I talked with Brad Fields a lot about that when he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, you have the toughest job in the world." And I was like, "No, ballet is the thing because they always need the stage for rehearsal and warm-up class,
Yeah.
and there's no time. And also, their budgets are smaller, so their lighting rigs are, and I mean this in the nicest way, but more antiquated and more labor-intensive. So it's just tough. So I know, Chris, you like that one, didn't you?
Yeah. Antiquated. Good term.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's just, they're just harder. Like the new technologies, which I'm sure we'll get into. I've seen ballet companies around the world now. They just don't want to adapt as quickly. And maybe Chris can speak more to that. You know, I talked with Brad about it. Brad always says it's time. There's just no time to take what was and put it into what will be. It's just tough.
Yeah, we were actually with the Joffrey, we work with this one principal guest designer all the time, and he does a lot of shows for us. And he was on tour in Baden-Baden recently, and they use a lot of moving lights in their rig. Their overhead rigs exclusively moving lights. And he came back and he was shocked about how easy it was using just moving lights. And I was thinking to myself, really? I could have told you that a long time ago. Which is funny because I've been doing this since 1997, basically. It was when I first started working in rep opera. And back in the day, we would focus 250 lights every single day, conventional fixtures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are the days.
Yep.
Now I'd be lucky to focus 50, just given with moving lights. I have an entire bridge full of source fours, which it's really, I should call it the source four storage area because we never use them.
Yeah.
Because under that bridge, I've got 15 moving lights that we just use instead. So.
Yeah, we're shipping all our Source 4 conventionals out to our Yonkers warehouse pretty soon, cleaning them up and packaging them. So, if you know of anybody who needs about 2,000 Source 4s, let me know.
If you know anybody who needs 30 VLs worth of parts, I've got that for you. So.
Yeah. Oh, I have such a funny story. We actually, because in repertory nonprofit theater, it's really hard to get rid of stuff because of CapEx depreciation spending and rules. Right. So finally, what we ended up doing with all our old VL washes, and we walked them out to 65th and Broadway and left them and sent some messages. And they were gone. I'm probably gonna get fired for saying that, but yeah, I got fed up with the red tape, and I was like, put them on the street because I know that Juilliard wants them, and they were like, they came out.
In Houston, we have a handy little bayou out the back, so we can just sort of shove things. Yeah.
And let's be honest, I live in Chicago. We have a history of getting rid of things that nobody wants to see anymore.
In the river,
I don't. If they ever drain the river, dude,
exactly. It's
going to be
don't drain the river.
I think I have thrown a piece of lighting equipment off the truck into the river.
Yeah, there's going to be a Verilight tied to a dead body.
Yeah,
basically
crazy. So. Oh my God! I still have so many VL 3500s. It's nuts.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Don't get me started on VL 3500s. Justin knows how much I love them. So anyway,
I mean, I'm the baby of the group, and we still have 3500s. That's like
I bought those 3500s, I believe.
Yes, you did. There's your name is actually on some of them.
Hey, when I bought those were the top of the line fixtures.
That's right.
Back in the day. They were amazing.
When the Four Seasons Opera House started, when they first built, we were one of the first shows in. And I don't know who consulted on that theater. It's an incredible facility. Don't get me wrong, but they bought a bunch of 3500s for front of house. And these are before they had the Q quiet ones. And they were basically useless because you couldn't, they were so loud. They were great light. Don't get me wrong. They're still around. And actually, Justin, we did a lot of things, those 3500s. We frosted them. We did a lot of crazy stuff to them to make them work. And they worked. They worked great.
The shutter assemblies are still the best for extreme rack. It's great. I beat up everybody about that. I was like, go look at the 3500 back in the day. Give me that again. Less full wipe shutters and more angles, please.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, true. You need those angles.
And that's the thing that John, I think I talked to you about it. We're going to replace those fixtures in the near future, but that's the request everyone always has is the beautiful 3500 rack from extreme positions to a sharp shutter. And that's, I think, the thing that everyone's looking for who comes through.
Yeah, I think some people are listening now. but it's a couple years out.
Yeah, they are. Some are. There's some really great shutter systems out there. So this sort of leads into our next question. Today, we all know is the day we're taping is the last day of LDI, and I know Justin, you're at LDI. Do you guys make it this year?
I didn't get
Okay,
to
so
this.
I'm going to turn this question a little bit then, because when I was doing a show, I was doing Tristan with Justin. He told me, he goes, we're trying out some new fixtures in the plot. And he was auditioning these fixtures. And I'm not going to ask you for your for what you think about the fixtures, Justin. But I guess my question then is, what type of fixture technology would you like to see for rep opera in the scale of shows that you guys do? Because I thought that some of those fixtures that Justin had, I'm not going to name them. Justin, if you want to, go ahead, but I'm not. Some worked really well and some didn't work very well at all. All right. But even the ones that surprised me that you wouldn't think would work well, worked actually very well for what my needs were in certain parts of that show. So the question is, what fixtures do you like? And because actually we were asked this on the panel at Light Talk at LDI. What's your favorite fixture, sort of thing, right?
Not to pick on a Dallas company, but back in the day, Verilight was the fixture. There wasn't
right.
You
Without
you actually had the VL3500, which was leaps and bounds over the Mac 2K, which was the other fixture at the time.
Right.
So the problem, for lack of a better term, the problem now is that everybody's got a fantastic LED fixture. The problem is none of them have everything. Like one fixture has these 4 items, which are great, but that last item is it's a game breaker. I can't use that. So, but nobody has the one fixture that does all, the one moving light to rule them all. But there's a lot of different companies out there that all have bright LED fixtures that they've fixed a lot of the problems of the early LED fixtures, which was extraordinarily horrible color.
Right.
But they've got the nice warm or cold LED engine, which is great. They've do all that, but now which one fixture do you want? What do you want to sacrifice to get the fixture you need?
So what's your dream fixture, I guess, is the question.
For me right now, there's 2 elements of LED moving light that I care about: color temperature and dimming curve. When I wanted to go lead 201, will it actually be lead 201? Or would I have to spend 20 minutes trying to find lead 201? And I don't want to play all my fixtures at between 0 and 10%. Is the only dimming curve I have. I want to put it at 20% and not see it. I want to have it fade up and not just pop on at 1%. So it's the dimming curve is I love the fact that at full it's 50,000 lumens and it looks amazing and it's bright as hell, which is great. But at the same time, there is a thing called subtlety in the world out there. Not that the Met uses subtlety anymore, but you need to have some kind of subtlety in your, especially I know this is more opera based, but I almost can't use an LED fixture these days with the Ballet because the Ballet still has source 4s on their booms. So turning those LED fixtures on with those source 4s, it's a joke. I mean, I've changed my shins from 36s to 26s and I've lamped them all to 750s just to cut through. Because otherwise, I just turn the boom systems on at full and I hope to God that they do anything.
Yeah, that they even register, right, in the composition.
No, absolutely. And I mean, there's this fantastic American lighting designer that we all work with. I won't name names, but we all love him dearly. Who likes to put Verilights in the bottom of his booms because he just needs to cut through. And that's when you have your Verilights' shin, that's fantastic. But the dancers sure as hell hate it.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like the increase in overall acceptable intensity is we're all suffering from the complaints from the stage. You get things in ideal places where they sculpt the body well, and it just makes it impossible for the performers.
Yeah, especially in opera to see the conductor. I get complaints now from my chorus all the time about I can't see the TVs. I had to rehang my box boom just to get the TV away from the LED fixtures and the box booms.
And I think too, as the rigs get brighter and brighter, we're finding it now too. We're having to chase Followspots brighter. We're having to then get projection brighter. Like everything is now the ceiling, as you said, that threshold, the ceiling just keeps getting higher and higher. And if you're a designer that doesn't know much between 0 and on, it gets kind of tricky to balance the stage now.
Yeah, and it's happening more often. You know what? And Chris hit it on the head. It's just like we do so many new productions now that the very first time any lighting designers, they all hit up our places. We won't name names, but I don't hear anybody saying, 10, 15, 25%. They're saying 75 and full. And these
Right.
are monsters. I mean, I do not have small lights in my rig anymore. And so they're all blasting and it's a problem. So, and I don't know. I don't know. You guys think it's because of the time constraint? I've thought about that a lot. It's just like I go back, after the opening performance and repertory revivals, because as we all know, all the designs are living, breathing things within our repertory. And I have to start tapering things off and changing things because it's the complaints come out in fever pitch, usually in the first revival season. I don't know. What do you guys get? Same?
Same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, when you think about the revival idea, it's like you look back at old shows back in '98 and whatnot. It's like, how the hell did we see these shows? It's impossible to understand how. I don't know if it's TV, if it's iPhones or whatnot that's making it so we think we can't see anything. But
It's the zeitgeist, I think. I just
Yeah.
think that the generations are changing and expecting something bolder and brighter all the time. I think television was, Chris that's exactly what it is. It's louder and it's brighter. So that's what people are used to.
You said shows coming back. I mean, I think we've struggled with that too, where shows 15 years ago that were lit with Source 4 Revolutions and Arcans, all of a sudden it's like, well, we don't have any of that equipment anymore, so we'll just throw Elations in or Max in or something, and you keep the same levels, and all of a sudden you're going, why is this so obnoxiously bright? And you really, I mean, partly, but the problem is bright is also exciting. So when you see it in a tech or whatever, you go, oh wow, okay, that was striking, it's exciting. It feels like we should all just sort of sneakily reduce everything by 20% before anybody sees it.
what I'm going to do, as part of the Joffrey, we've been doing the same Nutcracker since 2000, I don't know, 8, something like that. And I'm changing my whole rig from Verilights to a Robert Fortes in 3 weeks. So next year I'm
At /20.
Yeah, exactly. I'm debating putting a curve on all the Fortes just to not write them at full because I don't want to go through and change all of Natasha's queuing just because the fixtures are different. But there's no way. I'm never going to see the backlight because I'm just replacing the profiles. So it's going to be a tale of chasing my tail with those fixtures. I'm going to max them out at 60% and call it good.
Well, and going back to what Michael said earlier, I literally went to LDI to go look at Followspots because we're so bright, so much backlight that we're having to put 2 and 3 spots on people from the front cove. And like, it's just, you can't get more full than 3 spots
Whoa.
at full. Yeah.
You're putting 3 of those follow spots on one person?
Yeah.
Hold my beer,
Oh my
people.
God.
Yeah.
What is this? The circus? I mean, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is about brightness, some of it's about like balancing skin tone, some of it's all of that, but you're still having sometimes in some productions to have 3 spots on one person.
Wow.
I mean, our spots are also, I think they're like 18 years old or something like that.
Yeah, but they're really bright, man. I just used them. To me, again, because I'm not a real follow spot guy, to me it was like, bring them down a little more. Bring them down. That is really funny. Well, just now to branch off on that, Justin, did you see any spots that you like? Because I saw several that were very interesting.
I mean, not to talk gear too much. I'm all in with Juliat. Like, I thought their 2 new spots.
Juliat's great.
They're great lights.
Their new LED spots were like off the charts and beautiful. And my big thing now is, yes, what we're talking about, like, dimming, but also color rendering. Everyone keeps talking about brightness, but like when your color rendering index is down for the spots, you want to look at skin tone. So that I'm sort of pushing for a better color rendering for spots.
Right.
And those, when we metered it, was much higher than its friends. So that was where we were heading.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of spotlights and technology, what do you guys see the future of technology, including AI and VR? How it may affect the production process and the audience's experience in opera? Do you have any thoughts about this? There's so much
going on with AI right now. We've been talking about it on the show for 2 years now. And, my big prediction is and I think I talked to Justin about this, is the possibility of an AI controlled lighting desk.
I'm a notorious doomsdayer. Like my wife says, I live in a dystopian present. Augment 3D is a nice, fun toy right now. It's not, I wouldn't call it a tool yet because it's flawed in many ways. But I could totally, like you were saying, David, I could totally see 10, 15 years down the line, a designer saying, I want it to make it a pretty scene. And then it makes a pretty scene. It knows where your lights are, it knows where your set is. And it can, if an AI computer can generate a visual image of something, it could totally take a moving light and move it to where it needs to do to make a nice scene in the countryside.
Yeah. Like putting beacons on everyone and asking for that. Yeah, totally. That's going to happen, I think.
Yes, I agree with all that. But I was thinking more like just telling a board, take fixtures 12, 23, 73, hit down center, do a random intensity chase at 30 milliseconds and having it chase into cool colors.
I could even say, turn the blue sidelight on.
Right.
Let me see the shins at full.
Even in the simplest example like that, absolutely. Why can't a board do that now?
Yeah, and it's interesting. And then you think about like the next steps of like, I guess what performers are worried about right now, especially pop stars and stuff. But, we all have our own distinct style and approach, like I'm not the world's greatest lighting designer, but I might be one of the fastest. And I mean, does that need to be protected in some way? I have no idea. I hope to be retired before I need to worry about any of this. That's like when you first brought it up, I was like, retirement 9000. That's the light I want you to invent. So, yeah.
Or make this cue like in the style of Theramusser in chorus line and during, I think I got it, for the bump at the end of that number. Make that look like that line bump. Why can't AI do that now? Now, of course, programmers hate this. And the next step is that lighting designers are going to hate it because eventually, we all know the directors who think that they are lighting designers. Some directors I work with are I think Paul's a great lighting designer and Ken and a lot of other directors because we've worked together for so long. They're used to fixing my mistakes too. So what would keep a director from saying, I want the scene to look like this? And then it just does. Yeah, a little too blue, just...
I could see that practical use in like a church or some smaller setting when it's like make it blue, make the scene green, less blue. I could see that as the simplest. But in grand opera or in a lot of in straight theater, there's the artistic eye that needs to really be there to know how to fix why it looks flat, why it looks whatever.
I think AI is great at step 1 of 5 in design. I think it's really, really, really good at, oh, that's interesting. But I haven't seen anything that's polished enough or refined enough or subtle enough to sort of say, yeah, that's what that'll look like, in the final product.
Yeah. And Michael, and even if it gets there, right, it's like I tell people this all the time. It's like I did not get into this business to be a millionaire, and I try to remind students every time I tell them that it's getting harder and harder and harder to make this occupation viable, and the design fees are going down and producers want more for less and they want to give you less equipment. They want to give you less time. They want to give you less crew. And once we get to that threshold where AI is actually good enough, let's say, to replace us, anything's possible, right? Like, what are we going to do? Like, I got into this business because I wanted to create art with people. I wanted to collaborate. It's the reason why I'm not, a lone visual artist. We could all go off and try that avenue if we wanted to, or work corporate events, which those people do great work as well. But I really dig the pressure of collaboration, and that takes heartbeats in humans, and I hope that doesn't change, because then what are we all going to do? Like meet each other at the beach? Chris has already got all the cruises locked up from 2030 on, so I can't go on a cruise.
Sold out.
Hour and 13 minutes. Not that I'm counting.
Hour and 13 minutes. I love it.
It's a countdown. He's got a clock on his monitor.
Yeah.
Count down the cruise time.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what technologies would you guys like to see that make your job easier? Do you think VR is a thing? We were talking one time about being able to sit down with the director and put on some, Apple goggles, right? And actually do a VR thing of your ideas for the lighting of the show. Do you think that's a possibility?
I think it's all a possibility, but before we jump into it, I think it's interesting in our positions is that we're traditionally late adopters because of the work that we have to do. Like we have to wait for things to be stable. I mean, I jumped into a crazy overhead rig idea that everybody thought I was insane on, and I imagine make it stick, and I'm not dead yet, so it's good. Chris hates me for it, but it's fine.
Not as much as Polly Constable hates you.
Oh, she loves me, but
Polly loves everybody. She's a wonderful person.
no, she loves me mostest. Come on, we got to get that in. So.
Okay.
But it's interesting that I kind of want to I did want to bring this up in our process is that I think, especially with companies, especially my company, it's really hard for them to listen to us about how and when to adapt to changing technologies. Perfect example, visualization. I'm with Chris. I think it's an amazing tool right now. It's a very basic tool. I think that it could save my organization a ton of money and tech time if we started incorporating it. But you can't get these types of ideas off the ground because it's kind of an interdepartmental lift. And that's where everything kind of gets held up from my point of view. I mean, does everybody have those same problems where you're living and existing?
Oh, sure. I think like Augment 3D is great, but who's going to draft that 3D rendering of the set for me? And then I need to nail down the designer and the director to sit down and do it. I think it's a great, like I said, if I can get all my moving lights focused before the first day of tech, that would be fantastic. But there needs to be some prep involved with getting that stage there. And that also involves scheduling the designer to be available to do that and schedule my board app available to do that. And usually we bring the designer in the first day of focus. So I could do it in the room, visual VR, or I could just do it on stage. And there needs to be like John was saying, it's interdepartmental. Everybody needs to get behind that idea in order for it to work. But right now, Augment 3D is not there yet.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, it's not, there's time savings, but there's not time elimination, right? So you can move the time around, but you can't get rid of it. So it's either you do it on stage or you do it someplace else less well, but you're still using time. You still need a programmer. You still need a system. You still need a director. I mean, because I think part of the problem with previs is, John, to your point, it's a lot of times it's taking collaboration out of the room. And what we do doesn't really function when you design in a vacuum or you light in a vacuum. So you present this thing that might look wonderful and you spent 3 weeks on it in the Hamptons, but when you actually put it in front of another director or choreographer or whoever, it's going to be the same amount of questions and notes and backs and forths that you did. You've just now pissed away weeks doing something, on your own.
That time has not been saved. It's been just spent elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's funny, like I'll explain my idea that, because it's only particular to how the Metropolitan Opera approaches new productions, which is then how we build our repertory. We always do our tech before any offstage rehearsals. So the creative team has to come in and just think about ideas. And probably since like 2006, 2007, before that time, we had a very well-oiled system under, different management where August fed into the stage rehearsals in a more productive way. What I've been seeing now is that sometimes we take that tech week, and Michael, just like what you said about visualization, we throw about 80% of that work in the bin, and then we have to try to redo it during the stage rehearsals. Now that's just unique to the Metropolitan Opera. And so I could see us not doing those tech weeks using the stage, but in some really powerful visualization, knowing it's not perfect, and including everybody. You have the board ops, you have the automation programmers, you have the director, the choreographer. It'd be a massive system, but you're just not burning the stage labor time. And I know I'm not going to be popular when I say that, but that would be the way where my company could save, tens of millions of dollars with
Yeah.
easily. Now that's just unique to our creative process. And if our creative process change where they go, hey, maybe we should do off stage rehearsals, then tech, and then stage rehearsals, like a lot of people do. And then all of that development needs to be rethought because it wouldn't work. So, and I think that's usually how most companies do work.
No, we're like you, John. And I think Justin, you guys are still doing it as well. Well, we'll do a summer tech weeks, months before the show happens. And, you're like John said, you're lucky if 80% of that gets, or 20% of that gets into the show because, you could do one thing in July, and when it comes back, the designer will completely forgot what they did, which, is hysterical. Or B, the director staged them stage left, but they're, the light's all stage right. So you got to start from scratch again.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, we're talking about new productions mostly, not remounts, because a remount I could see, because Justin and I just did a remount, and it actually was quite useful. And I don't know if we threw out 90% of that, Justin. I know we threw some of it out, and especially with Paul, because we like to evolve our shows, because we do this a lot. We remount a lot of our original productions, but there's always a little bit different. There's always something new or something different. But for new productions, the evolution of it, I could see where you do come in a few months early and then say it's not going to work that way. Yeah, it is a lot different.
There's three, I guess there's many, but there's also revival of an old show with a completely different director and a different designer.
Oh,
so the physical set's the same, but the director and designer have, even if it's the same lighting designer, it'd be a different director, and they're completely staged in an entirely different way, and they have different aspects. So
or different lighting rig as well.
Exactly, and you could take and throw out all the cues. I mean, that's when the lighting director's favorite term comes into play, which is the transposition of what it used to be to what it is now.
Transposition's a dirty word.
But
so bad.
Going to that point, like we sometimes, we just remounted a version of Carmen that we keep doing, and the director for that had some new ideas, right? So going back to that, it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, originally it was done this way, but now they have a new idea. So now you have to, if you're relighting the show and the direct designers out there, you have to make that adjustment. And I think that's particular to opera, is like you have to be paying attention to all that.
Yeah, I've started lovingly calling the piano dress rehearsals at San Francisco the final room run, because it's the first time you've gotten flown back to see the show since it's been, you lit it 6 months ago as a concept, and depending on, the director and how put together they were. So I think a lot of times Summer Tech is beholden to the director having an idea of what they want it to look like. Usually the lighting person can show up and do whatever, but the director is sort of vapid about what, the show's supposed to look like. You can light it very well over that week, but, you come back and sort of go, oh, we went someplace else in the room. But it is, I think some of the golden time, and I actually don't know, Chris or John, if this is at your places as well, but doing the chorus stagings in the summer, I think is wildly helpful at San Francisco, because that is actually kind of rubber meet road time for the production, especially productions that, obviously only for productions that use chorus, but I think that forces the team to really start to shove the show into shape, because it is so expensive and so kind of important.
We typically do our core stagings, I would say, a week before the piano rehearsal on stage. So, and we have a weird contract where our AGMA course requires to be on stage under a glorious focus work light, and rehearse the entire show before we turn lights off on them. So, which is fantastic for us, because that gives me an opportunity, gives the carpenters a day to put the show up, and then I get a full 5 hours to point my lights and look at all the cues before the PRT happens. So it makes my life a lot easier, as opposed to San Francisco, which I'm pretty sure is the schedule still the same. The first time it hits the stage is the day of the PCA Plus.
Not always, but generally, yes.
Yeah.
Like it depends on, we're trying to be like more sensitive to new productions and give it a little bit more time. So like that's part of it. I think we've all realized that like it's not the same, even though people think remount and new production need the same amount of time. It's not.
One question that we get from a lot of our listeners is working with people from other countries. Why don't you tell us about the challenges of working with overseas designers and directors?
Someone else go.
Wants to take up this one, people.
That's a whole other podcast, I think.
Yeah, I just left the building. Yeah.
I think there's a coffee spit take in there too. So go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't approach it any differently, to be really honest.
Mhm.
And maybe it's just because my world's just gotten so small. And I think all of ours has, especially in the last 10 years when co-productions came around, which is another favorite dirty word of mine. But it's just funny. It's like it doesn't faze me, like worked with directors and designers that don't have a firm grasp of the English language. And I think once again, it's people management. I find that they will do just fine. And they need to understand that I'm completely comfortable communicating through Google Translate or going hand gestures or going up stage and like trying to figure out exactly what they're being passionate about and just doing it that way. It's fine. I mean, another thing that we all have to do is travel around and fill in for the lighting designers who can't make all their obligations around the world. So, I mean, we travel. It's funny. People don't think we travel, but we do, and we go into places and then they put us in the repertory model and we get no lighting time to basically redesign work, that's being revived after 10 years. And you usually get the B crew and you have to make it work. And I love doing it.
Which is hysterical. I was going to say, when I do that, when I take shows on the road for designers to other places, and we go into another house and they put us in the rep, this staff is always so grateful for me being there because I understand. So I have no land time. That's fine. I'll go get beer and call me when you're ready. And then, as opposed to an actual real designer who will complain constantly about it, we're whatever. I understand. That's fine. This is your rep plot. That's great. I can make it work.
Yeah, I show up and get lots of love.
Yeah.
I don't know how everybody else is, but because it's just like they go, oh, he can do it. It doesn't matter what happens. He'll find a way. And I mean, just recently when I was in Barcelona, they scheduled my only queuing day during EU elections where they couldn't work.
Oh my God.
And then the TD came down the Friday before that weekend, and he was like, have you figured out a plan? And the director goes, he's done. Because I was done. I just did it all offline in my hotel room. And then you just relied more heavily on the moving lights than I thought I was going to have to. And we were done. So it's the hardest thing is like, I think we, the 4 people in this room are definitely, when you get into that situation, it's saying, okay, I got to design a show under the company restrictions that are currently in place. And there's a lot of people like, oh, you're changing shows. You shouldn't do that. I like to communicate with my favorite digits on my hands when people say that to me, because it's just like, listen, the art comes first, your ego comes second,
No, but deal with international designers, like John said, it all comes down to how good is Google Translate today. I've had European designers who before my Zoom meeting, they want me to send the questions to them so that they can send it through Google Translate and have their assistant answer them for them. So, but right now, I have more issues with American lighting designers than I do European lighting designers.
Yes,
I
agreed.
was just about to say that mentioning earlier, expectation management, I think is actually more applied to Americans than anybody else at this point.
I think it's how they're trained. I think they come out of these schools and not only do they have expectations about what they're deserved, either personally or what their production, and I don't mean this in a negative way. This is truly like, let's just keep this completely objective. It's just they have a preconceived notion of not only how their production is going to go for them, and then actually pre-visualization is working against us because they spend hours and hours and hours of time, and they always ask for outside assistant time and outside visualization time, all of which I reject. Absolutely. Because none of it will hit my stage and none of it will help the company. And I take a look at it from the standpoint that if it doesn't hit the stage and is efficient for the company, we're going to be doing less productions, which is less work for everybody. And I have a responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. And I also think that they're at least for our institutions, there's also an expectation. Like you come to the Metropolitan Opera, yeah, I have 335 moving lights in the rig. And they're like, oh, this is going to be great. And I'm just like, you still need to plan. You still need to write down your ideas. And
You need to plan more, actually.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you do.
exactly.
And because then you tell
Jesus.
them, I mean, basically, once again, it's push and pull here, but I think all in, a lighting designer gets about 50 hours total to get their opera on stage. And none of that is dedicated lighting time.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
about 30 hours of tech time, and you probably get 30, 35, maybe 40 hours of stage and rehearsals and stage and orchestra time. And no blind time, no makeup time. The word hold is the most hilarious thing I've ever heard in our business. I was just like, I'll never say it, you know.
Well, I think going back to what we said earlier on, what I like about the Europeans is that they don't talk in like this light goes here. They talk in ideas a lot to me, and that's really useful. It's like, oh, I can help you with that. We need a special electric. That's easy to figure out. Or like, oh, you need a light at 10 meters stage left. We can figure out where that is. It's not talking about like, I need to hang this moving light at this exact position. It's giving you like more ideas, and we are all good designers what we do, so we can help that process. And I think that's more interesting.
I've always had this discussion with guest designers when they come through. It's like they always ask me, "So when do I need you to send you information?" I said, "Your due date's X, but really, I'll take whatever you can get me when you have it. If it's a full plot that's drafted, that's great. If it's an email this long, I could make that work."
Yeah. Cocktail napkins are encouraged.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I once got a plot that consisted of, I want a big light upstage left, maybe an HMI, some park cans on stage, and that was his entire light plot. And he's won several Tonys. So it doesn't matter what you give me. I've seen it all. I've seen a European rep plot dumped onto my rep plot from their house, not to scale, and that's what they wanted. It's like, I can't even get these fixtures in the States, and you want me to do this?
I got a light plot one time that had someone else's title block and LD union number on it.
That's
I
classy.
had to,
Oh
and
my
I
God.
and I had to send it back and being like, I think you forgot to change the title block.
I mean, I get
And
plots
the
all,
acting areas don't fit inside the set. Sorry.
I get plots all the time from Europe where it's literally just notes it typed on. That's like, and that's perfectly fine. I'd rather in some ways have that, because then we can go back, at our inventory and be like, oh, you want that up there, that'll work. And then the next part, which is like, how does it all work within the repertory, and trying to figure out how it all fits. So in some ways the training can hinder.
Yeah.
I spent a couple years before I became a dancer. I was teaching during the summer at DePaul, and I was teaching young, and I did a couple years at Northwestern with grad students, and just trying to get them to understand that yes, you could hang an entire plot of moving lights, but you need to know what they're doing, and you have to know there has to be an intent behind why you put that moving light there. You can't just say, I'm just going to put a moving light there because for the hell of it and figure it out later. I need to know. You need to have a list about what presets you're planning for, because you can't just wing it when you get on stage, especially in opera. We do not have 10 out of 12s where you can sit there and think about an idea while the entire cast is standing around waiting for you to make a light cue.
Right.
You got to go. And you're lucky if you get a light walker on stage to know where the people are.
Well, I think it tends, and this maybe is an age thing. I don't know, actually, between like European and American, but I think lately we've encountered more and more that compromise when you're putting something on the stage is now seen as a sacrifice as opposed to just part of the process. Like how design and art function is within limits and with compromise and with conversation. And I think somehow, like Justin, to your point, I think it's a lot of, I would say this is a lot of younger designers tend to be, I need this specific thing hung here doing this, as opposed to what I'm trying to create is this. And then you partner with the house, you partner with your team, and to get it to happen. It's a lot more, you're kind of showing me the bolts of the process. But if I think it's true for all of us, if we don't have a clear concept of what the goal is, we're useless. And you can't kind of use the mechanisms of the companies we work at to get there if all we're seeing is the sort of faceplate of the idea.
Guys, we have unfortunately a hard stop coming up, and we have one more question, and it's a really important one.
And that is, many of our listeners are young lighting designers who may be wondering how to get into the area of opera lighting design. What advice do you what advice do you have for them?
I mean, I always say that this is all my job here is all Chris's fault because he gave me a job. I was perfectly happy doing regional theater at Broadway, and then I flew out to California and kind of got sucked in. So that's my 2 cents. Is blame
So
other
Chris-
people.
everything on Chris.
So
Right,
Chris's
there,
home
Chris.
phone number is X. Call this number and you're going to be great. It'll be perfect. I think the only advice I could give is that there is really no experience when you're starting out that is worth turning down. I mean, as you can tell, I bounced around. I came from a very small college in Montana, small town Montana. I thought I was going to fly helicopters for the Coast Guard as a career.
Wow.
So this was my backup plan. And I knew that where I came from and I wanted to come to New York. And I said, I'm not going to be able to compete with some of these lighting designers that are coming out of these larger schools. They just had larger bank accounts and larger fallback plans and, family close and everything like that. So, when I got the internship at the Met, I was like, I have to make this stick and in whatever way I can. So then when they offered me the job in the technical department, was that my dream job? No, but I was going to make it work for me. And then that's how I got to meet people. That's how, I met, all the lighting designers of the time. And it was a great experience. And then finally, it turned around where all of that, I'll do this. Yeah, sure. I'll take that job. Yeah, I'll move overseas. I'll take care of that company. It led to the Met calling me back and being like, we have a problem in the lighting design office. We need you back.
Let's have a conversation about how John used to be a carpenter. I mean, talk about the arch enemy of the lighting department is the carpenter.
Yeah, exactly. I loved putting that in there because you guys we can't be friends with him anymore. So yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I have to admit, let's not minimize or diminish the fact that all 4 of us have been lucky too.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Very lucky. So I don't want anybody out there to get discouraged about the fact that if they feel like the first 5-6 years of their career isn't going the way they want, because you just keep at it. That's the hardest thing. I'm trying to avoid the carpenter thing. So, and run the clock out. So
As I tell young designers who are in their 20s, it's like, don't think that you're going to be a lighting designer. If you need to learn something else too, learn projection, learn video, because you have no idea what the hell you're going to do with your life. And it's more important that you are multifaceted, especially going forward in the world. Every show these days has projections in it. Almost, it's out of control now. So
it definitely is.
you need to move. I mean, yeah. Like, what was that show you just did? That Ken
Grounded
Adams piece, Grounded.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was
Jason Thompson.
I mean, I think
everything was great.
Everything's great.
I think having a lot of experience helps also in our jobs. Like, I have a pretty wide range of corporate events and opera, ballet, and Broadway, and like using that actually in our jobs on the daily is really useful because you can sort of look at what your experiences were and like reference that to things you're trying to do on stage. So it's not answering that question. It's like, it helps you on your daily job. Right.
But also a lot of what the 4 of us do, we've been talking for an hour about design and great design concepts and blah, blah, blah. But let's be honest, a lot of our job is paperwork. A lot of our job is, it's like being a librarian at times. It's like archiving and how it goes. So it's great to have that eye about where light needs to go and all that stuff. But it's also, you need to be excellent at paperwork. And I don't know about and details. I think Michael Clark's the only person who works for a company that uses light right now. So have you guys finally gone to light right?
Ish. We use light right in our office, and then we send it back down.
Then we send it downstairs, yeah.
Yeah.
So you need to.
We do keep breaking it, to be fair.
That's good.
John's going to come after us.
Yeah,
guys.
John is now really going to hate this podcast.
Sorry, John. But It's paper. It's so much paperwork, so much looking at how like it's focused, and like we said a lot about the intent. It's like yes, the designer stood at exactly 4 feet 3 inches stage left when they focus that light, but in reality, it's a side light, and if you it needs to be, we need to write down side light cut off of the goods that they cut off of, and that's all you care about because you need to know what the intent of the light is. So, and then you need to, I always say the best assistant line designer is not a great artist, but somebody who knows what the designer wants 5 minutes before they want it. And it's organized enough to be able to give it to them when they need it. So they can see, oh, channel 501's out of focus. I already got an electrician standing by ready to focus that. So when 5 minutes later, when the designer says, what's that light that's out of focus? And I can say, it's 501 and Bob's already there to focus that light for you. So that's what an assistant does. An assistant doesn't watch the show and doesn't watch the drama. An assistant watches the lights. That's what we do. And it's how to know what to look for and how to be organized in your paperwork and in yourself, but how to replicate that.
Well, and being organized helps the process of repertory, right? Like they
Yeah.
all like, if a moving light goes down, you need to figure out how to fix it or what can you do instead, right? Or, we'll use an example, David, for Tristan, where one of our moving lights went down and we frantically grabbed a luster to point it through the window. So at least we had a light, right? We didn't have a dark spot. So trying to figure out like solutions when something goes awry is, I think, sometimes 90% of my job.
Specifically for opera, I think I'm fascinated more and more by whether it's stage management, ADs, whoever that come through, people that haven't ever seen an opera. And I think if it's a field you want to get into, which has lots of benefits, it's very stable-ish. It plans out a long distance. The salaries tend to be better than at regional, whatever. Go see some operas, sit in an opera house, and ask yourself if this is really a space you want to inhabit, because it is a very specific kind of experience. And if you want that to be a profession, I think it's probably helpful to have seen one at some point.
And also be friendly. I know it sounds silly, but I go have that drink at the bar with the director because like what Michael was saying, go see shows. But also, if you're in this town and they're checking a show, call the designer up, call the company up, and say, hey, can I sit behind at the tech and watch the show? Because it's all about people. It's all about associating with people. If you're an introvert who doesn't like people, you don't get hired as designers. It's about knowing people and getting around. Because 9 times out of 10, the line designer is hired at a bar between a drink between the director and the set designer, and that's how the line designer gets hired. It's not so much about talent; it's about who you know and who is going to get work. So you just need to be friendly. I mean, I'm in this business because I was hitting on somebody who was working in a costume shop, and then the phone rang, and then they needed a line designer, and I got the job. So it had nothing to do with my talent. They never saw my portfolio. I was just being friendly with somebody.
It was your good looks, obviously.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, guys, thank you so much for being on Light Talk this morning. Speaking for all my brothers and sisters, we hope that your seasons are successful and that you and your families have safe travels and a wonderful holiday. And thank you so much, Justin, for helping putting this together. This is really an awesome show, and especially young designers are going to get a lot out of it. You guys are all working incredible jobs, and you put together, one thing we didn't talk about was putting together a team, a staff of people who are truly a team, who are all engaged in creating the art of lighting. That is very impressive. Bravo to all 4 of you for putting together such wonderful teams. So thanks a lot, and thank you for being on Light Talk. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity. No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast. However, if you decide to litigate, the Snoot Group with the legal team of Sparks, Watson, and Beam will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted. Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers. Coming today from San Francisco, Long Beach,
Houston, Texas, New York City, and Chicago, Illinois. And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you a double helping of our casserole of nonsense. Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world. So we will see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.